Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan. I am an alcoholic and just here to share part of my story and to humbly share my choices. And also, in this, when my hurts hurt others as well. When asked about a topic, I just requested it to say journey of choice. And if you saw the flyer, it had a gentleman on there with a backpack. And the first part of this is going to have the backpack with rocks in it. Uh, and really, it's about life choices. When the solution started as a good thing but became a problem. Uh, Tomorrow it'll be 2 years since I had my last drink, but there's a lot of things that led up to it, including going to treatment once before that, 4 years prior. But I didn't go to surrender. I went to take control, and take control and fooling myself was pretty much what I got out of it. I didn't have a drink for 7 months. It was only a hoppy beer just to taste it, and and I was still on probation at that time because I had gotten a second OWI. But once I was released from that probation, that first weekend I overdid it tremendously and hurt some family members in doing so in my actions and words. So I should have learned what trying to take control of my own meant. Uh, but going back to the part of going to treatment a second time 2 years ago was to truly surrender. I had gotten a third OWI, which meant a felony of proven guilty, jail time, minimum of 30 days. And I really wasn't focused on that. I was focused on realizing that what led up to it at that point was these things in my past that I had not resolved. I had not taken accountability of. I had not dealt with them other than alcohol. And I had realized at that point that alcohol was like a tornado in my life, and I was trying to calm it in every way. And the only way to settle my mind at night to sleep was alcohol. Well, my alcohol drinking wasn't after 6 o'clock at night. I worked from home. I had it hidden in the garage, in my office, in other rooms, out in the shed, so that somebody might not know and I could be out there and have it without them seeing me carrying it around. And all that alcohol did, starting from morning through the day, was add more debris to the tornado. And the tornado just got bigger from an F1 to an F2. And reality was it went up to an F5. Going to treatment 2 years ago, I came across um, some literature, and I'll just put it on your guys' screen here, called The Tree of Addiction. And we can try and cure one addiction or get rid of one, such as alcohol for myself, but there's many branches, and you can go from the gambling and religion and sex and drugs. You can cross addict. I think if they updated it now, they'd have social media on here. I tell you what, if you don't think social media is an addiction, put your phone away for a day. Try a week. I don't think you'll make it a half a day if you're on it all the time. But what's more important on this picture is the roots of that tree. Because the roots of the tree is what feeds those branches. You can cut that branch of alcohol off, but that root's going to feed another branch or it's going to grow somewhere else. So until you take care of some of those roots that are in your past, in my past, they'll just keep growing and spreading. And that's why I wanted to share that to start. I going through some of the steps and talking with mentors in this room and spiritual mentors outside, I realized that I had to do a deeper dive into my life and realize where some of these things are coming from once I had this information of the tree of addiction. And when I talked about when a solution becomes a problem, when I was young, my folks, they always stayed married, but they were not quite like fire and gasoline, but I was the peacemaker, and that worked well to calm the household. And but when a peacemaker becomes a living, you become a people pleaser. And then when you become a people pleaser to fit in with a friends group or athletics or fit in no matter where you're at in the community, that becomes your identity, becomes your life. And along with pleasing people, you can grow resentments because if you're doing it and it grows and grows, you start doing it just to get something back in return, get appreciation, be accepted. And when you don't feel like you're getting accepted, you turn to other things. And there's a gentleman in here in many of our meetings that talked about spiritual malady, and I just kind of brushed him off and listened and basically heard the words, but didn't take any action into understanding it. Not until 6 months ago when I was chairing and he talked about it, and I looked it up, and it's about an emptiness that we're trying to fill with something else, an emptiness that I filled with alcohol. Alcohol became the solution to begin with. Fit in with friends. And then when I was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, I apologize, 20 years ago, I went through a divorce and started feeling like my kids were being used as pawns to hurt me. And I went deeper into the bottle, and the alcohol became my answer for everything. Now, if you would know me back then, you'd see me going to church on Sundays. You'd see me involved in children's worship or youth groups and think that I was religious. And quite honestly, that's all I was. I knew the word, I knew scripture, I knew a lot of that stuff. But it took me a long time to realize that religion and spirituality are not one and the same. Religion is doctrine, man made. Spirituality is your relationship for me with God. If God's not something that you feel, it would be called a higher power in AA. And I walked away from my spirituality, and the alcohol became my God. And as I got deeper into the alcohol and dealing with feeling of rejection from a spouse, I entertained talking with women, either via text or when I was traveling and drinking. And quite honestly, all of it was immoral. But I would then lean on the excuse that, well, it was because I was drinking. It was the alcohol's fault that that door was open. And that's a full-fledged lie because I still made that choice. I made the choice to drink to the extent I did. I made the choice to engage in the texting or communication outside of my marriage. I engaged in physical activity outside of my marriage, but I justified it. I justified it because I was hurt and thus it was okay. And I'm here to tell you that it's not. It wasn't okay for me. I got remarried. We had a daughter, and then there became the conflict of the blending of a family. My my biological kids testing, who do I love more? My spouse testing, who do you love more? And I tell you what, trying to calm a water in a hurricane doesn't work. And adding alcohol to it just added more devastation to it. And there was a time I made a choice not to take my daughter's side or stay home from work and take care of my daughter. Instead, I sent her off to somewhere else while I went to work because my spouse wouldn't have her at our place, but she was okay with her brother. And I dealt with that through alcohol for over 10 years. Uh, that daughter does not talk to me. That daughter at one point got caught doing something that her mother detested, embarrassed her with it, with a boyfriend and the boyfriend's parents. And to save herself, she blamed me for sexually touching her for about 5 years. And I had a DHS call with a chief of police ready to handcuff me if it came out to be anything other than a lie. I tell you, sitting through an interrogation like that hurts, not just because somebody said something of a lie, but it was my daughter. That day I was proven innocent, and I shed many tears of hurt, of anger. But then later on, I left and went and got a lot of alcohol. As I said 2 years ago, I was dealing with things I hadn't resolved, and that's one of them. I put other people in harm's way by getting behind a wheel and driving. Not once, not twice, not the 3 times I got caught. But there's a lot of other times that I put other people in harm's way because of a selfish choice of drinking and driving. It's a little embarrassing to talk about stepping out of a marriage and doing things when you're sitting in front of people. Those are the things you try to hide. Those are the things that are those big rocks in that backpack that carrying around for a long time. As I said, there's in the beginning things were a solution. You know, even those getting the attention from somebody from the opposite sex was nice in the beginning, but it led into more, and it tore my marriage apart. And then I blamed it on other things that were going on that she was doing in our marriage and our family, and not taking personal accountability. The going through the last time that I went to treatment, as I said, I fully surrendered. I went to treatment for the 4 weeks. It did appease the court. It did appease my spouse and family members, but I wasn't there this time just to appease. I was actually there to commit the full surrender that I was an alcoholic. I couldn't do it on my own anymore. And I dove into the literature and finding out what was going on. Not only I did the 4 weeks of in treatment at the same campus, we could do day treatment. I volunteered to go to unassigned appointments and other learning sessions on the campus. When I left there was July 2nd. I hit a couple of Zoom meetings because they talked about hitting 90 and 90. And then actually I got kicked out of one because they either thought I was a bomber or something. But you know, God has a way of sending us to the right place. what I was longing for was family, a true family that accepted you, not because of how much you made, not because of the car you drove or anything like that, but who you were as a person. The other part of the name of this group is family, or spiritual. And I knew I was longing for that because it was missing. There was a hole in me. And I've been here ever since. In the first year, I missed a total of 14 days. And since then, I've averaged 5, mostly 6 times a week. I've had the opportunity to host and share and do security and be of service here. Once I left that treatment and starting here, I also added or joined into a group called or IOP, Intensive Outpatient. And that's actually where I picked up on this tree of addiction. And then added, you know, the outpatient after that for another 24 times. This program is not sitting back like going to church on a Sunday and sitting in a pew and calling yourself a Christian, calling myself a Christian by doing that. It's actually taking the action, doing the steps wholeheartedly. And I say that, and a year ago when I went through the steps, the fourth step, I was hovering at 30,000 feet. Here's the things that people know about. I didn't dive into these things deeper, looking back all the way back to childhood or any of the other stuff. I wasn't acknowledging and taking accountability of the deep things we're supposed to. And my fourth step and fifth step were, well, I talked and told people about it. I didn't truly sit down with a mentor, a sponsor, and dive deep into these things that are embarrassing, these things that it was fear over faith at that point. I can't tell anybody that. They're going to think less of me. They'll throw me out of AA or tell me to find another group because immoral things that I did. I will tell you today that there are still temptations and triggers. After I left that treatment facility, my wife and I and our daughter was on a trip just to a neighboring city to go out to eat and shop. And somebody called and said, there's like 5 police cars outside of your house. And the story came about one of these things that reputation starts getting on there. Well, Dan and your neighbor had an affair. And the neighbor boyfriend, I got to step back. The neighbor told her boyfriend that we did so that she could try and entice him to like her or want her more. They told my wife, this was a year prior. And I'm like, I have no clue. I have no memory of it. Well, you drink so much, you probably just forgot, blacked out. And I even said I'd take a polygraph test. Well, when they broke up, he was gonna hurt her, and he went on Facebook, hashtag Rock Valley, where we live, and named me as somebody who did something. And Amanda was embarrassed that it was out. I was embarrassed because my name was being smeared. A week later, the neighbor messaged both my wife and myself separately. I'm sorry, that was a total lie. I said that to try and get more attention from her boyfriend. Those are not things that are very easy to forgive. Those things ripped our marriage. And I'm not saying I'm innocent because there was conversations, there were other things, but what they said I did not do. Although my reputation led my wife to believe it. And she had a right to believe it from other things that had happened. But it's hard to repair. It's hard for them to trust. After that, my father-in-law, who had lived with us for 5 months, died suddenly. So there was more stress in our relationship, my relationship with my wife and our lives. None of this I had ever drank through. A few months later, the company I worked for called and said, we're relieving you of your job. We have to downsize. So I lost my nice income. I was the provider of the family, and now I'm left with nothing besides unemployment in a package that could keep us going for a few months. 2 months later, my wife said she wanted to take a job in another state. That's where we had intended to move after her daughter graduated that year. And I became the stay-at-home parent. I had extra duties to do. And I normally had, but then I also had the freedom that I could have stuff in the house, in the garage, in the back shed, and it was very tempting. At the same time, I'm still working through my legal battle on that third OWI. These are all choices leading up to the graduation. My wife and I were looking at a house, but we couldn't afford it because I didn't have an income in the other state. She decided to get an apartment instead. We both had to sign our name. I had to mock up some information, fake that I was making some income, get it signed. A month past that, on Father's Day, when I was visiting, she said she wanted to have a divorce. Because I had control of the phone system or the cell phones, I could see that some texts were going between her daughter and her, that her daughter was worried about paying for college, and that my wife's response was, I'll help you as much as I can, even by getting a divorce. My wife tried to move our daughter out of state to claim it was up there so she could live there without me, have the child support, have all the finances. And I was extremely hurt and devastated that all I was this whole time was a paycheck. It wasn't me, it was just what I could provide. I could have kept my daughter in this state, but it wasn't right for my daughter. I wrote up the agreement that my daughter could be at both places 50% of the time. I should be getting child support, and I said that's not to happen. I actually got in a fight with our attorney about it, my attorney. A while back, she was been really nice and asked to help move because she couldn't find anybody else. And I thought, you know what, there's a possibility for reconciliation here. Well, after I helped everything get moved out and I lost wages to go do it, I was told, no, there's nothing here. You don't have a job that pays enough with great benefits and all that stuff. You're not good enough. I don't know for any other man or any other person if any of those things would hit, but it pretty well sucks. I'm known to shed a tear or two, and I did. I was gut wrenched. There's a gentleman that was talking about feeling gut wrenched about his relationships, and I did. I reached out to many people within this group and then some other spiritual members from a retreat I went to. And quite honestly, I had one person that's a great sponsor here that said, well, Dan's guilty. He has to take responsibility. He put himself in that position. And he was right. I made the choice to go do those things. I was not leaning as much on my spiritual strength, and I went to the desires of the flesh and made choices to do it. And then I grew resentments because of it. Well, if you think of that backpack with all those rocks, after going through the fourth and fifth step again, I dropped a lot of that weight. Instead, I filled the backpack up with survival gear. Some people say receiving the survival tools from this group, from this AA program. And you can call it what you want. You can call it a sponsor. You can call them a mentor. You can call them a spiritual guide, whatever you would like to do. For me, that is survival gear. This past February, I was invited to a retreat, a spiritual retreat. And as I mentioned before, my daughter hasn't talked to me in a while, and knowing scripture and knowing other things, there's a story about the prodigal child who wants all the inheritance and runs off until they spend it all, and at the end they decide they need to turn around and come back. And that was part of this weekend, and I kept thinking of my child, other people, And not until the Spirit came in me and changed my perspective that it was me. I was the one who had run away to alcohol, to other things. I wasn't leaning on my God, the spiritual side. And it takes a lot of honest and open and willingness to look at myself. And in this hurt that I've had and I felt, I realized it was only a glimpse of how much I've hurt other people in my alcoholism and in my actions that I had done prior. One of the first things I need to do when going through these steps, which was that advice and wisdom and encouragement was given from a member here, is to forgive yourself first. Acknowledge what you did, accept it, and from going to this spiritual retreat, I've been going through the repentance of it. And what does that mean to me? The repentance is just that, acknowledging, taking accountability, and turning from it. I'll tell you, one of the hardest things I had to do in forgiveness was forgiving my ex-wife with how she treated our kids. And went through it's a Native American ritual with sage and tobacco, and somebody can maybe post later what it's called in the chat. And I was going through that, and I started praying for the people in the room, and then I started praying for my ex-wife and her husband and her mother-in-law, who told me just to leave them, forget my kids, walk away so they could have a happy family. And after I said that prayer, which is also the prayer on page 552 in the big book, I felt a tremendous weight lifted off. Forgiveness is powerful. Forgiveness is hard. Doesn't mean you're ever going to forget the things in the past that hurt you, but it means that you don't hold it over them anymore. And another thing that going through step 4 and 5 did for me is all those rocks were easier to let go and dump out of that backpack, because once I acknowledged them and took accountability for it, those secrets, those lies, those things that I was carrying around lost their power. Now they are an indicator to me and a warning of, hey, when these things come around again, it's playing the tape forward. Go down that road, and it's a temporary fix. It's a temporary good feeling, but with a lot more hurt behind it. And coming into this room, and the mentors that have started this room, the mentors that have been in here for a long time, the mentors who give us hugs, they keep me getting up in the morning. They keep me coming back. The members in here that I love that have stepped away from the program but came right back, their honesty, it lifts me up. It's an incredible thing to have a family like this. At the end here, I asked to have the first verse of Amazing Grace because it means a lot to me. I'm still having the scales pulled from my eyes for me to see some of the other shortcomings of my past. But now I can see the beauty of the future that I have. On that poster, there's pictures of things I get to do now that I've been able to do with my family again. I don't know if I've had a stronger bond with my son. We spent a road trip from the Midwest out to Oregon and back, and we did fly fishing and hunting, and that's a picture of him with his mule deer we got out there in beautiful Wyoming. And it's amazing the things that come back to us. Nothing's guaranteed besides a healthier life for me. I went through a divorce. I have my daughter 50% of the time. I have my son and his wife. Today I went to his graduation and he found me, embraced me. His wife came, wanted, and we got to take pictures together. It's a beautiful thing that we can have. And I'm going to tell you straightforward, there's still triggers. There's still hurts that happen. There's still days that I'm like, I grunt and groan about what I have to do, but no longer do I got this program. Now with the understanding of being in here and listening to mentors that have been longer than me, mentors that have been had less time than me, I get this program. I can't rest. I can't say no big deal. I need to reach out. I need to talk to people. And I'm better for everybody that's here. And I think